There's no place like the Cube. Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Aina Deshawn, with our queer news for today. Now, I want to make you a promise. We will continue to bring you the latest in queer news, culture, and politics every Monday by 7 a.m. Chicago time. So if you are digging our intersectional take on the weekly, consider joining the Q Crew. The Q Crew is our monthly membership program we started to help grow the podcast. You get weekly emails from me, exclusive interviews with LGBTQ influencers from across the country, and beginning this year, special behind-the-scenes footage too. With your support, we can bring you more stories celebrating our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and comrade communities. Click the link in the show notes to join the Q Crew today. Don't have $5 to join the Q Crew? It's okay. There's things you can do for free. You can rate and review us inside your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend. Or two. Family. Black people in the South make up 38% of the population, but 52% of all new HIV infections. So why aren't we talking about it? I'm Aina Deshawn, your favorite queer radio personality. My co-host Dwayne Kramer and I will explore the shame, the stigma, and the solutions. This is Black HIV in the South. How did we get here? Tune in on The Cube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now for the news. The community is grieving again, this time for Rasheeda Wiliams, a Black trans woman murdered last week in Atlanta. In politics, the U.S. House passed a federal transgender sports ban. Lucky for us, President Biden's in office and will never sign it. And an out trans legislator in Montana has been silenced. Now in entertainment and culture, Billy Porter is set to play James Baldwin, and The Reeds, the 10-year anniversary tour, has been canceled. Let's get into it. Let's go.
You are now tuned in to higher frequencies. We do this frequently. Turn your radio station to E3 for that decency. Listen to great music and the latest movement. Safe listening for anyone that's tuned in. Who you waking up to? Aina Deshawn, Q Crew and friends. It's that real talk. Online radio with the spins. You caught up in traffic, frustrated. Just check in with E3 to shift your vibrations and get elevated. That's queer radio done right. Choose to be yourself. That's the only way to live life, and that's how it's done here. Just know y'all tuned in to the greatest. Ain't no competition. We ain't worried about the other stations. Check.
Family, last week, I reported on the murder of Ashley Burton. Do y'all remember that story? She was a Black trans woman, makeup artist, hairstylist, who was killed in Atlanta and found outside of her apartment complex. Yeah, now, this week, I must report on another Black trans woman who was murdered in Atlanta. Her name is Rasheeda Wiliams, who the world knew as Coco the Doll. Coco was a rising star in the entertainment industry who was featured in the hit 2023 Sundance Film Festival documentary, Kokomo City. Kokomo City did so well and is doing so well across the film festival circuit, Lena Waithe's company actually picked it up for distribution. Her death has left the community grieving again. I can't tell y'all how exhausting it is to report on these stories. Oftentimes, I don't know the people, but I know the experience because we've experienced it here in Chicago. I've lost friends, and it's all too real. And all this political mess, which I'll be reporting on in just a little bit, it's just so full of hate. And that hate manifests itself in the murder of Black trans women and trans women of color. In this case, the Atlanta Police Department confirmed that her death was one of 3 violent crimes involving transgender women this year, highlighting the epidemic level of violence that Black and brown transgender women face in America. Coco was a strong advocate for the trans community and reminded us just recently at Sundance that Black trans women can do anything and be whatever they want to be. The creator and director D. Smith said in an Instagram post, "I created Kokomo City because I wanted to show the fun, humanized, natural side of Black trans women. I wanted to create images that didn't show the trauma or the statistics of murder of transgender lives. I wanted to create something fresh, inspiring. I did that. We did that. But here we are again." Her co-star in the film, supermodel Dominique Silver, did an interview with 11 Alive, the NBC affiliate in Atlanta, and had this to say. Take a listen.
She was a beautiful soul, very caring, very giving, very warm. And she was living her truth, and she's a beautiful light and a big part of my heart. Not the way that I wanted my sister to leave this world. She had a lot of goals and hopes, and she was just a very positive, sweet person that was stuck in the struggles of being a Black trans woman in America.
So family, anyone with information on any of the 3 active cases in Atlanta are asked to contact Crime Stoppers Atlanta online at stopcrimeatl.org or via phone at 404-577-TIPS. That's 404-577-8477. Crime Stoppers tipsters do not have to give their name, you don't have to do that, or any other identifying information in order to be eligible to receive a reward for up to $2,000 for the arrest or indictment of the suspect or suspects in these cases. Rasheeda Wiliams, Coco the Doll, we say your name today. Now in political news, in a divisive move, which, might I add, the Republicans are really great at, okay? The House Republicans have passed a bill, 219 to 203, literally. All the Republicans voted for it and all the Democrats voted against it. And this bill would ban trans students from participating in school sports. They call the bill the, quote, Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2023. And this bill looks to amend Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 to define sex as based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. Isn't that nice? Now, if this bill was to pass the Senate and be signed by the president, which, for the record, won't happen, but if it did, the bill would threaten funding to school districts that do not keep trans students off certain teams, but does not provide guidance. This bill, it does not provide any guidance on how to determine a student athlete's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. You know what, family? I've seen what the legislators from across this country who are passing these anti-trans bills are doing, and it's disgusting how they're deciding to figure that out, but I digress, okay? LGBTQ plus advocates have criticized this bill, of course, while 40 professional athletes wrote a letter to Congress asking them to reject it. Athletes such as Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird, Chris Moiser, and Cece Telver. And let us not forget that President Biden signed an executive order in 2021 supporting transgender athletes and has vowed to veto the legislation if it reaches his desk, which we don't believe it will. In just a little bit more political news, Montana has silenced the only trans member of the state house. I feel like I'm just repeating stories. Y'all can remember a few weeks back we talked about Representative out of Oklahoma, Maury Turner, and they have silenced them there. Also, the first and only non-binary legislature in the country. And now we're here in Montana. In Montana, the Republican Speaker of the House, Matt Rieger, has decided not to acknowledge Zoe at all when she speaks to the House on any issue for saying this. Y'all not even gonna believe what they have silenced her for. Just take a listen to what Zoe had to say.
If you vote yes on this bill and yes on these amendments, I hope the next time there's an invocation, when you bow your heads in prayer, you see the blood on your hands.
Yeah, that was it. Yep, that was it. That was all she said, and now her voice has been muted. He refuses to acknowledge her at all on any topic that comes up in the House. In response, Zoe has remained resolute in standing up for the rights of the trans community. Montana Republicans demanded an apology, but Zoe refused, stating that no amount of silencing tactics would deter her from speaking up for the community. The Montana American Indian Caucus has spoken out in support of Zoe Zephyr, saying that the trans community has been ignored by lawmakers in the state. Representative Zoe Zephyr, I want you to know that the Queer News podcast and the Queer News fam have your back. And Queer News, if you live in Montana, call the State House and tell them you stand with Zoe Zephyr. They need to know you care and that you won't be silent. All right, now let's take a quick break and hear from a couple of our sponsors, okay? I'll be right back.
Are you lost in your podcast journey? If so, you found the right podcast. My name is DJ Tracy Treese, and I'm a podcast producer. In partnership with theCUBE, I'm bringing you the Lost and Found for podcasters. I've worked behind the scenes on some of your favorite podcasts, and I'll be bringing you some great conversations with podcast industry experts to help you find your way through your podcast journey. There's so much information out there, and the industry is rapidly changing. No need to feel lost. You found the right podcast. Subscribe to the Lost and Found for podcasters now. Everywhere that you listen to podcasts, if you prefer your podcast in video, click the link in the description to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube.
Family, this is your favorite queer radio personality, Aina Deshawn here. And if you're listening to this sponsor spot, that means it works. That means these ads can work. And we've got some amazing Pride specials coming up for all of our episodes in June. I want you to check out the link in the show notes. We got $15 shout outs on the podcast. We'll give you a shout out on the podcast and on Instagram. And if you want to get one step further, we can do Instagram, TikTok, and the podcast. Let's go. Support queer media and buy a Pride ad today. Welcome back, family. Now, let's move on to entertainment and culture news. Many podcast fans were surprised by the Twitter post by Kid Fury, co-host of The Read, when he announced they would be canceling their 10th anniversary tour. The Read has become an institution, okay? For so many, it was the first Black queer pod they really got into. Now, what I think has been a universal reaction outside of sadness or disappointment that the tour isn't happening is love for Kid Fury. In the announcement, he talks about him struggling with his mental health and needing to check himself into a facility that will give him the help he needs. If you want to read the whole statement, just click the link in the show notes. You already know there's lots of magic in the show notes, okay? But I will say this, that I appreciate his honesty, because it's not easy to be honest about having a mental health challenge or needing to check yourself into a facility. People definitely don't talk about that part. So for me, this was just a real reminder that you must take care of yourself, that this is a mandatory activity, not optional, not selfish, mandatory, required, okay? Also, fam, if you did purchase your tickets, they're saying your refunds for the tour will be available at your point of purchase. And for our last story today, Billy Porter is getting the Twitter children right on together, okay? So let me tell y'all what happened. The announcement hit the social media streets that Billy was cast to play James Baldwin in an upcoming biopic. Well, you know how Twitter does. The people have an opinion, okay? And they were truly questioning whether Billy was the right person to play the role. I honestly don't know who would be a better person. I'm sure there are others, but I digress again. Well, Billy appeared on the Tamron Hall show saying, quote, "I am 53 years old and I've dedicated my life to my art and craft. Question me at your own peril." I feel like he said honey after that, but I'll be making that up. The biopic, which is still in its early stages, will be based on the 1994 book James Baldwin, a biography by David Lemming. Billy went on to say, quote, "People have been doubting me my whole life. This ain't nothing new. It's okay." You're right, it's okay, Billy, because you got the work, okay? And I feel like you're gonna do this so much justice. And I also get the people who are always questioning, but I think there are people who are really protective over James Baldwin. He's seen as very much so a sacred figure in the queer community. But I feel like Billy got it. I feel like he got this. It's that time of the show where we close out with a word, because Anna's always got a word. Now, this word is coming from a song that I learned while attending the most affirming and inclusive church of all time. The church is called Broadway United Methodist, and they have a long history of being a place of refuge for the LGBTQ+ community. Well, while I attended there is a song by Mark Miller called Draw the Circle Wide. That really hits at the heart of this work and the work that we're all doing if you're fighting for justice, right? That we must draw the circle wider and include those on the margins. Now, here are a few lines from the song so you can get an idea of what it's about. It says, draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Remember that, family, as you move through your week, as you interact with people who are different than you. Remember that our business should be about drawing the circle wide. All right, family, till next week. Peace. If you enjoyed what you hear, rate and review us inside your favorite podcasting app. This podcast is a production of E3 Radio, your #1 queer radio station playing queer music and reporting on queer news in high rotation.